Hey ladies and gents, welcome back. This is going to be something I actually got an idea from a different YouTuber. I'll be honest, I was watching their What If, and I was like, that'd be a cool idea to do, and I decided I wanted to do it just with a little twist of my own. So the start of this is going to be like completely different from what most people would expect. Like, usually people expect really nothing to change until they end up getting to like where Bulma like starts actually getting a liking towards Goku, like after his Kami training, like when he like first gets his like teenage body kind of a thing. But I'm gonna start way like sooner than that. I'm gonna go back to where Kakarot is literally born. So in this What If, he's going to be born 4 years earlier than what he usually is born as. So he would stay on planet Vegeta for 4 years as like a little kid before eventually getting sent off planet still by Bardock when he finds out that when he gets his like little dream that basically says that Kakarot one day is going to be the one to defeat Frieza, and all this stuff like that happens normally. He gets sent off the planet, except at this point he is around, he's basically 4 years older than he was originally, and he'd spent 4 years on planet Vegeta itself. So this is going to have a few different like impacts on things, obviously, because we'll say because of the fact that he had like, it's like 10 times gravity when you're on that planet, and at the beginning of the series Goku had a power level of around 10. We'll go half that, and we'll say when Goku like first arrives he has a power level of 50. Just because, like, spending time on, like, 10 times gravity would be really beneficial, but I didn't really want to do it because he's, like, in between the ages of, like, 4 and 5 right now, so I didn't want to say he had, like, a power level of, like, 100 or something like that. So I'm just going to say he has a, we'll go 75. We'll go with that. That just sounds like we'll go in between the two numbers. Why not? So he has a power level of 75 when he arrives on the planet Earth, and he would still get into contact with Grandpa Gohan. And I'm going to say Goku's personality, or Kakarot would actually be what his name is right now, his personality is similar to that of, like, Vegeta in either, like, but it's basically after, like, the Buu arc. At, like, that version of Vegeta, like, he's kind of like that. Like, his personality, due to, like, growing up with, like, some of the better Saiyans, I guess you could say, with growing up with Gine and, Bardock, with Gine basically not really fighting and actually being pretty like passive and kind-hearted, whereas Bardock was kind of the same thing. He actually cared about his kids, and in terms of like Saiyans, he was actually a pretty decent guy in terms of everything. So now years would pass, and Kakarot would not. He would retain his memory, and he would retain the memory of his parents and why he was sent here, and all the things like that. And he would know that Gine and Bardock did not actually send him here to like conquer the planet or anything like that, even though that's what Raditz said. That's not why he's here, and he would know that. So he retains his memory, retains his name, and the years go by, and he would know about the Great Ape transformation, so he wouldn't end up looking at the moon, which basically means that Grandpa Gohan is going to actually end up surviving this. So as the years go by, Kakarot reaches the age of 16, and this is where Bulma shows up. You're like, wait, no, Goku was 12 on that, but yeah, it's 4 years later though, and Goku is around the age of 16, or when Bulma shows up, she is also 16, and Goku has his like, or Kakarot has his like teenage body that he had after he went with Kami. And I'm gonna say his power level after like basically training on his own and with Grandpa Gohan, so he'd probably have much better ki control than what he did right off the bat, just because he's been training with Grandpa Gohan, who's pretty powerful. He has a power level of around 150. So Bulma would show up. He would probably still be fishing. She would bump into him with a car, and she'd be like, and she'd basically try to shoot him. The bullets obviously would do absolutely nothing to Kakarot, due to him being literally 15 times stronger than his original self. But he'd be pretty calm in the situation due to, like, he's actually a lot more, he's more educated than he was due to, like, actually having somebody to grow up with, and he knows females exist. He doesn't think that this person's just a male without a penis for some reason. So, he pretty calmly just asks Bulma exactly what she's doing, or asks this person what she's doing here. She explains the Dragon Balls, introduces herself as Bulma, and at this point, she doesn't really like Goku for his personality, but she's like, damn, this guy's a freaking muscly hunk, like, damn! Like, that's basically just what she's thinking at this point, thinking that he's pretty hot. Like, that's basically just what's going through her head. So they'd go and they'd eat with Grandpa Gohan, and Gohan would end up showing Bulma the 4-star Dragon Ball. So with them showing them for the 4-star Dragon Ball, Bulma would basically be like, okay, well here's one, now I have to go get the rest. Kakarot would be like, can I go with you? And obviously Gohan would like to have Kakarot go with her due to like him not really experiencing anything in the world just yet. Bulma would accept this because, again, he's insanely powerful and it'd be nice to have somebody really strong with her, as well as the fact that she kind of likes him. Like, he's pretty hot is what she's basically thinking at this point. She's like, huh, maybe I can make a move at some point during this time. So with that, they go off and they go and get all the Dragon Balls. The events of getting the Dragon Balls remain basically the same, with they get the Dragon Balls really easily, and they go through and they get the Dragon Balls really easily. So when the Pilaf gang attacks, Kakarot has absolutely no difficulty dealing with them, just because he's insanely overpowered at this point. Even if he does end up getting captured and put into the castle, he would easily just break out. He would encounter Roshi, and he would still end up taking the turtle over to the sea. Roshi would give him their Dragon Ball after a little bit of convincing, I guess you could say. And he would offer Kakarot some training, obviously, just like he does in the... Or he would actually offer him some training this time, just because he can sense the immense amount of, like, power and potential that this kid has. So with that, they're like, okay, they basically get all of the Dragon Balls. But by the end of this journey, something's a little bit different. Bulma doesn't really want to wish for, you know, to have her perfect boyfriend, because she thinks she actually is developing a crush on Kakarot, and she thinks that maybe she'll just date him instead. So she offers Kakarot the wish, and Kakarot contemplates this, and at some point during the time that they spent together, Kakarot probably, or he would have ended up telling Bulma about his past and the fact that he's an alien. This wouldn't stop Bulma from liking him, obviously, because she ended up liking Vegeta, and she knew he was a Saiyan, so that wouldn't really stop her, and if anything, that would just make her develop more of, like, a sincerity about the way she feels about him, because, like, he has a pretty sad past with all his parents dying. He actually remembers this time. So, this is where Kakarot and Bulma both get the idea. What if he resurrects his parents? And when they get this idea, they're like, yeah, that'll work. And they end up doing that. They revive Bardock and Guinea. So after reviving them, Bardock and Guinea are obviously very surprised, but they see this person standing in front of them that looks a lot like Bardock. So Kakarot basically reintroduces himself, and he's just like, I'm Kakarot. And they basically realize what happened, how they somehow got revived, and the fact that Kakarot basically revived them. They ask exactly what's going on, and Kakarot explains basically what's been going on and the Dragon Balls. So with that, they start basically developing a plan to train and then try to get Raditz to basically join them, and they kind of want to take down Frieza at the same time. So Kakarot is explained of who Frieza is and different things like that. So due to Kakarot and Bardock being there, they would end up giving Bulma and Bulma's dad the idea to build some type of gravity room, or a gravity chamber, because that's the reason they were able to progress so quickly on planet Vegeta, is because it has like 10 times the gravity that Earth has. And they realized that this could like significantly boost the amount of training they'd get, and they'd give them the idea. A few months later, due to them not being as technically advanced, so it would take them like probably 2-3 times as long to actually develop this, they would actually successfully manage to get the actual room, no, almost called it Room of Spirit at time. No, not exactly that. They managed to get the, why can't I frickin' talk right now? The gravity chamber. So Kakarot and Bardock begin training together in that, and eventually they begin training with Master Roshi to better or further their ki control and different things like that, and learn different techniques from him. So all of them, including Krillin, train in this basically gravity room, and they train in 10 times, 50 times, 100 times gravity, basically just casually increasing it as time goes on. Now, obviously, Kakarot is not training nearly as hard as he was in the original when he went to Namek, just because he doesn't need to at that point, as well as the fact that he doesn't really know about Senzu beans. So he's not training as hard. So this training goes on for a few years, until it's about... I can't remember exactly how many years later it is. It's the 23rd Tenkaichi Budokai, or the one that it's the second one that they usually enter, but Kakarot didn't enter the first one, so that didn't really happen. So it's the second one they enter, or where like Krillin usually like dies and but King Piccolo usually gets revived. It's that one. So they basically all enter, or Kakarot, Bardock. I don't even think Master Roshi would enter, because he'd know the he'd know the Saiyans like severely outclass him, but Krillin would end up still joining. They still end up fighting Tien and everybody like that, except they have absolutely no difficulty dealing with them. We'll just say this. With the basically like 3, 4, it was probably around 3 years that they ended up training inside of the gravity room, most of the time at around 100 times gravity in their base forms. Let's just say that their power levels are not really anything to scoff at. I'm not gonna like give an exact power level until like Raditz or something like that shows up, but they easily managed to take down all of the competition until it's the finals. The finals would obviously result in Kakarot ending up fighting his father, because those are like the two undoubtedly strongest people there. So their fight would begin, and I'm not actually sure who would exactly win this fight, because I'm pretty sure Kakarot has like higher potential, and they've been training like a lot longer, or I'm not sure what I'm trying to say. He basically didn't like start at such a high power level that Bardock would start at. Like Bardock would start at a power level of around 10,000, whereas Kakarot would start at around 150. So he obviously would have caught up really quickly. So I'm just gonna say the fight ends up with Kakarot winning, but it's not like a knockout or anything like that. He just like physically like knocking him out, but he like knocks him out of the ring kind of a thing. So Kakarot ends up winning, and he wins some money. But this is where Bulma and Kakarot actually start like developing like an actual like liking towards one another. So over the next few years, they would end up getting together, and things like that go pretty, they're dating, I guess you could say. So now they easily managed to take down Piccolo, obviously, with absolutely no opposition. But just for the sake of having Piccolo around, he still ended up shooting out his egg, giving little baby Piccolo all of his power. Baby Piccolo would still end up training, but he still would be absolutely no match for Kakarot or Bardock in the next Tenkaichi Budokai, where they ended up fighting next. So, with that, the things would happen, and, life would remain pretty peaceful, and Kami would eventually probably come down and explain to him what he is, and the Dragon Balls, and different things like that, just so they have the knowledge, I guess you could say, because, again, they're insanely powerful. So, now, it's the year, I don't remember what year it is, I think it's, I don't know, whatever year it is, where everybody's basically reunited at Kame House, and Kakarot and Bulma show up, and they have a kid. This kid is named Trunks. Just because Kakarot wouldn't have had to name his, basically, child after Gohan, just simply because of the fact that he never died, so he wouldn't really have that much of a reason to, at least not yet, because, he's not dead. So, this is where Raditz would show up. He would use his scouter, and he would sense 2 absolutely massive power levels. Or a few absolutely massive power levels, I guess you could say. 2 at around 20,000, 1 or 3, 4 at around 5,000, and then 1 at down by like 1,000. So obviously the 2 that are at 20,000 are Kakarot and Bardock, but they're both like insanely heavily suppressed at this point. They're just like casually walking around. They're suppressed. Like they have a lot more power. The 2 people, or no, 4 people, or 3, I think it would be, whatever. The people who are at around 5,000 would be Krillin, Master Roshi, Tien, and Yamcha, while the one at 1,000 would be Chiaotzu. And I'm just gonna say Gine is probably at around, like, I don't know, probably around where, like, the stronger humans are, around, like, 5 to 10,000, I'm gonna say is where her power level would range. And Piccolo at this point would probably be at around 1,000 to 1,500, just because he was training a lot harder, knowing that there's a ton of people who are, like, absurdly stronger than him. So Raditz would go and check out the really high power levels, and he would find basically his entire family, being Kakarot, his mom and dad, and seemingly his nephew, as well as his brother's wife. So he would basically be taken aback by this, and he would actually end up joining them. This is obviously due to multiple reasons, such as the fact that his entire family is there, and the fact that all of them are minimum of, like, 30 times stronger than him, or at least for what he knows, they're a lot stronger than him, is what he's trying to say. But he would eventually, obviously, like, get rid of his scouter, but obviously when he was using his scouter, Vegeta and Nappa would have saw the power level, or would have heard, Raditz probably would have said something about the fact that there were power levels of above 20,000 there. So Vegeta and Nappa would end up going there, thinking that that would be a really good chance to recruit some people for their cause against fighting against Frieza. So with that, they end up heading there. Raditz would explain to the two of them that, or the Z Fighters basically, that 2 other Saiyans are going to be showing up in a year's time, but based on their power levels, they're not really going to have too much difficulty with them. So the year passes with everybody training, and Raditz training with everybody as well. Now, in the suppressed form, Kakarot and Bardock are probably at around, I'm going to say Kakarot is at 60,000, while Bardock is at, let's just say 50,000? Yeah, 50,000. And Raditz is basically lacking behind at around 20. The humans, basically all of them, except like Chiaotzu, at around 10,000. And the Saiyans are looking at this and they're like, why is everybody here so powerful? They basically tell them about Frieza, and they know that they're not going to be able to take down all of these humans unless they enter their Ozaru forms. But they see that Raditz, who is literally stronger than Vegeta, still has his tail, whereas Kakarot wouldn't. So they know that even transforming wouldn't work for them. So with that, they don't throw up the Power Ball. So yeah, things like that. And they would basically try rationally talking to the other Saiyans and the humans just because they know that they wouldn't be able to do anything to them. And they realize that these could be really good allies for them to end up actually fighting against Frieza. So they recruit them, and due to the nature of Kakarot and everybody else around him, they obviously end up going, as well as the fact that Bardock had already explained to them that their goal was eventually going to be to take down Frieza. This just happened to be a little bit sooner than what they had expected. So Kakarot takes some of his Senzu beans, and they get in some of the space pods and ships before taking off towards planet Namek. Because they had mentioned, or they had a plan to mention the Dragon Balls to Frieza, basically luring him into a trap, basically so he could, or he would want to wish for immortality. So they'd eventually show up at Namek, and this is where they'd try to gather as many of the Dragon Balls as they could before Frieza could, just so they could really solidify the point that Frieza was not going to be getting his immortality. So they'd eventually get to where Guru was, and after finding Guru, they, or not all of them, but some of them get their potential unlocked. This being Kakarot, Trunks, because he would end up going as well. I'm going to say Bulma went with them, and she gets her potential unlocked, but it's not like a massive power boost, it's like intellect boost for her. So like, she's a lot smarter, and she does gain a power boost, just not anywhere near as dramatic as some of the other people. Some of the humans get it with like Krillin and everybody like that getting it, and I don't think, I'm not going to say Raditz, Vegeta, and Nappa don't get it because Guru doesn't really trust them, but Bardock would actually get his potential unlocked. So I'm just going to list their power levels like when they're not suppressed right now. With Kakarot, after his power boost of getting like the, what the heck is it called? The potential unlocking, whatever you want to call it, his power level is up at a whopping 10 million when he's not suppressed. Bardock, with his potential unlocked, is around 5 million, and the other humans are all at around 1 million, and Piccolo probably would have went as well, he probably would have gotten his potential unlocked, bringing him about to where he was when he fought against second form Frieza, so I'm going to say he's at around 1 million too. So, Frieza uses his advanced scouter, and he senses all of these absolutely massive power levels, but most of them are only at around 500,000 to like 200,000 right now, just because they're all suppressed at this point. So he would instantly call in the Ginyu Force and transform into his probably third form, just not really wanting to underestimate them. Oh, but underestimate them he will. So he begins challenging the Saiyans and humans, and he isn't doing jack shit to them. They're actually managing to do, he is basically not even as strong as, some of the weaker humans are. So, at least in his third form. So, someone like Kakarot, who's at around 10 million right now, they don't stand a chance against him. So, Frieza would obviously transform into his final form, and he'd get to at around half power before, obviously, this is where the Saiyans and everybody like that isn't really doing all too well against him. So, with everybody realizing that they can't really do this, Vegeta throws up a power ball. He's gonna regret that. So, some of the humans some of the Saiyans with tails actually end up transforming. With Raditz, he's just wrong, but he's not, that over-godly powerful. I'm gonna say he was at around 500,000 when he's not suppressed. So right now, he's at 5 million, which still isn't that all too great. While Vegeta is not, Vegeta's basically only at, 20,000 normally, so, he only goes up to, 200,000, so he's not anywhere near strong enough to do anything. So, obviously, Raditz would not be able to control himself, and Kakarot would basically chop off his tail, knowing that this was the source of that power. And they would realize that this is not going to work for them, and they need to find a different way in order to defeat Frieza. Due to Kakarot not ending up learning either the Kaioken or the Spirit Bomb, he can't exactly do the things right now that he'd want to be able to do. So he would be trying to face off against Frieza, but he would be doing absolutely nothing. At this point, Frieza would be getting kind of bored, and he would lift up one of the humans and or Saiyans into the air. And he decides he was going to pick one of the weaker-looking ones, which is Trunks. He picks him up, and he shoots a little blast, basically through him, killing him almost instantly. And at this, Kakarot is standing there. He's completely speechless. You can see the rage, seething off of him at this point. And sparks start flying around him as his power spikes up and increases dramatically. And in one seemingly brief moment, his hair flashes yellow and his eyes a really light blue. And he looks up at Frieza now, with his power level now at around 1 billion. And he looks at it'd be at 500 million, I don't care, whatever. He looks at Frieza now, and he has absolutely no mercy for him. He charges a Kamehameha, preparing to end this in one, basically, blow. Frieza, powering up to his, basically, full power, tries to do his little, death ball. He tries to basically stop Kakarot from killing him, but it is to absolutely no avail whatsoever. He can't really stop the beam, but he's actually able to survive due to his, Frieza's race's, absurd vitality. So, everybody thinks he's dead, and everybody's mourning the loss of Trunks, when a massive, basically, death ball is basically kind of sensed above them, and everybody looks up to see this giant death ball crashing down into the planet. They did not have the time to react to this, and they couldn't do anything about it. They had already gathered the Dragon Balls, and Guru wasn't under nearly as much stress as he was, due to having all of these people here basically helping him. So some of the Namekians humans and Namekians end up using the Dragon Balls, kind of like they do in the normal but in the normal verse, to basically wish back all of the people that are there, other than Kakarot and Frieza, back to the planet Earth. Kakarot would once again be fighting Frieza, but now he'd have a little bit more compassion, I guess you could say. He regained his composure a little bit, but this compassion isn't going to do anything, because again, Kakarot's basically personality is that of around Frieza in the Buu Saga. And I don't know if you know this, but Frieza doesn't, or not Frieza, but Vegeta doesn't exactly spare enemies all too often. So he would end up killing Frieza with really no difficulty whatsoever. He would then find some random space pod, realizing it doesn't work, before finding a Ginyu pod, because again, Frieza still summoned the Ginyu Force. He would not really know how to work it, and he would just be randomly pressing a bunch of buttons, but it would eventually take off, and Kakarot would begin flying towards some random place in space. So with that, that's where I'm going to leave this part off, so I'll see you guys in what if I do next. Peace out, bye.